I had an out-of-body experience which was so profound. It made me question my life, the universe. It made me question every single thing that I know up until now. I remember looking down at myself being pushed by these two big ladies on a hospital bed, and I'm viewing this whole thing through the eyes of someone or something else.
Hello, kia ora. Welcome back. I'm Kirsty Salisbury, and this is another episode of the Let's Talk Near Death podcast. Today we cover all the topics. We're going to talk about life, death, and the experiences in between. I'm chatting with Ryan Nurse. Ryan had a profound near-death experience when he was 18. He was actually attacked on his way home one night, and this experience led him right to the brink of death. He had an out-of-body experience. He could see himself, and he came back with tools all around how to get better, how to heal, how to connect with himself, how to live his best life, and go on to help others to live their best life. He's written a book, How to Sort Your Shit Out, which is very compelling, very interesting. And he's also got his guide on his website, which is the Ultimate Life Transformation Handbook. I'm excited to get into this because this is quite a profound story. So Ryan Nurse, welcome along to this conversation. It is great to have you here.
Hello, my friend, and thank you so much. I really do appreciate you for your intro. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm really excited for this episode today.
So sort your shit out. I love this title. I think this is great because I think we've all got stuff to sort out, right? We've all got things going on. A lot of people think that when we have a near-death experience, and people think this for me as well, because I've had my experience, that we come back with all the answers, that we come back and we know how to sort our shit out. I certainly did not, still cannot. Love the book. Tell us a bit about how did you get to the point of that? What is your story? Where did you end up having to look at these things?
I was a very confused child growing up. I had no dreams, no desires, no visions, for instance, like children have at school, for instance. They want to be a firefighter or fly a spaceship, for instance. Like, I had no dreams. I didn't know what to do with my life. And because of that, say, lack of clarity, I become a car mechanic. And I sort of fell into the pathway of becoming a car mechanic, which I'd done for way over a decade. And I stayed stuck in that job because I didn't know what to do. But look, when it got to the time when I was 18 years old, I'd done what any normal, say, 18-year-old would do, which was to go out, to party, to have fun, to enjoy themselves, right? Like, just imagine back now, any of the listeners that are over the age of 18, just think back for a moment to like when you was 18 years old, how happy, how excited you were to go out, to party, to drink, to have fun, all of that stuff. So, look, one night I went out with some friends to a local club. It was so local. We would go there sometimes even 3 times a week because it was so close to our house and we knew everyone here. Like, we'd just go there, have fun, have drinks. And it was just like a gathering, just like a networking event, you could almost say, because we just knew everyone. But this one night, there was a group of guys there and we didn't know these guys. There was these 4 guys and they seemed like they were just out to cause trouble one night. So we're in the club, we're partying, we're dancing, we're literally drinking, we're dancing the night away, we're having the time of our lives. And these sort of slightly older guys, older compared to us, bearing in mind, me and my friends were sort of 18. I think even one of my friends was 17. He shouldn't even been in the club, but he was. And we was in the club. And these sort of older guys, maybe 24, 25, 26, they were like men compared to us. And they were arguing with our older friends as well. And after this sort of like heated discussion, it all got broken up and everything seemed fine. And we just carried on with the night. But when it come round to, say, leaving the club to now make it back to the safety of our parents' homes, me and my friends, we left the club, we entered a taxi, and we noticed that these same guys had sort of followed us out of the club. They come over to our taxi and they removed us from the vehicle. And they just started to say, like, we've already booked it, it's our taxi. Bearing in mind, our driver was already leaving the car park. So we couldn't really understand why all of a sudden the driver would take us and then change his mind. But look, it's cool. We had a bit of a disagreement. So we flagged down a separate taxi, we got into it, and we left the car park. We turned left, and we turned left again onto a dark, unlit road. And as we're driving down this dark road, we noticed that those same bright white headlights of that same vehicle with those same angry guys in was following us because it illuminated like the whole interior of our car. And these guys are like coming up behind us, they're tooting the horn. And before you know it, this loud, angry voice come through to our driver's walkie-talkie demanding that we pull over. So our driver just began to slow down. He began to stop the car and he actually pulled up onto the curb. So me and my friends, like confused, scared, worried, we were saying to our driver, like, what's the reason for you for stopping? But he was just silent. He didn't even say a thing. And he pulled up onto the curb and he just stopped the car. And that same vehicle with those same men in pulled up behind us and they switched their lights off and they turned the engine off. And now there was just this eerie sound of silence. Me and my friends looking at each other thinking, what happens next?
Mm.
So as we sat there thinking, what's going to happen? Out of nowhere, this bam, 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 loud knocking noise on the passenger front window. So my friend opened the window and said, like, what's going on? What's the problem? But as he did, he began to get punched through the window.
Oh, man.
So me and my friends, obviously scared, my friends got out of this side at the back. I opened my door, but as I opened my door, I was greeted with the same fist. I hadn't even had a chance to take my seatbelt off. So I was sat there like a sitting duck. I couldn't move anywhere. And this guy was just pounding me in the left side of the head. And it was just like a hammer drill. It was just over and over again. And he wasn't stopping. And my belt is obviously done what a seatbelt should do, which was to lock. So I couldn't even get out of my seat. I was just glued to the back of the seat. And this guy just pounding me in the left side of the temple. And honestly, at one point, I just said to myself, like in my head, I just said, like, Ryan, this is how you're gonna die. Like you're not getting out of this because this guy just showed no signs of stopping. But thankfully, you know, for me, I popped the buckle and I got the belt undone. And as soon as the belt come undone, he stopped. I managed to get out of the driver's rear door and I just run down a side road. And as I look back, it was just like it was like a movie. There was just like this huge fight, and it was horrible to see my friends being beaten up. So straight away, I just grabbed my phone and I just called a friend who I knew lived close. Him and his girlfriend lived close, and they could pick me up. So I was just like, "Come and pick me up now! Like, come and pick me and my friends up and take us back home." So I just sort of hid in this bush down this separate street, and I don't really know how long it took because my heavy head was just spinning round and round, and it was so heavy, and there was so much pain in my head, and I was begging my friend to hurry up. And as he arrived, he just said, "Ryan, get in," and I got into the car. And I remember as we was driving back, my head was just falling down. Like I couldn't keep my head up. It was just falling down. And I remember one point I just leant it against the windowsill to try and keep it up. But he kept saying to me, my friends, they were saying, "Ryan, we need to take you to hospital. You really need to go to hospital." And I just insisted that I needed my bed. I just kept saying, "Please take me home. I need my bed." My head was just hurting so much. And in the end, look, I did. I managed to convince them to take me back home. And the last thing that I remember was arriving to my parents' house, walking up to the front door, putting my hand on that handle and stepping through. But now I can only talk to you in my parents' point of view because I don't remember anything after this. I just blacked out.
Mm.
And my mum, she always waited up for us children, like us kids, when we'd go out to say party, for instance. Every time she'd wait for us. But this one night, I was a bit later than usual. And my mum just knew something wasn't quite right. And apparently, I just walked straight past her as she was sort of waiting up on the landing at the top of the stairs. She asked me, "Ryan, are you okay?" And I just blanked her. And I got into my bed. I took my clothes off. I folded them up, and I just went to sleep. And my mum was looking at me, saying, "Ryan, is everything okay?" But I wasn't responsive.
Mm.
She went and said to my dad, like, "I think there's something wrong with Ryan," but my dad was just like, "No, he's okay. He's just drunk." And then before you know it, I was vomiting. This jet black vomit was coming out of my mouth, and my parents said it was almost like projectile vomit. And my younger brother, he was up on the top of the bunk bed across the room, and he was watching me, and it was horrible for him to see. And I remember my parents were just watching me, and my mum just kept saying to my dad, like, "There's something really wrong with Ryan." And my dad just said, "Look, he's probably had this black Zambuca shots and he's got so drunk and he'll be fine in a few hours. In the morning, he'll be fine." But, you know, like my mum with those maternal instincts, she knew deep down like something wasn't quite right. And thankfully for me, a few hours after, my older brother got a call from my friend, you know, and he said, "Is Ryan okay?" And My brother was like, why wouldn't he be? So then he explained there was this trouble after the club, like on the way home. And my brother's like, oh my God. So told my parents, like, go and wake Ryan up now to make sure he's okay. So with that being said, my parents rushed straight into the bedroom, tried to wake me up. I was completely unresponsive. So with that being said, obviously the ambulance was called. The paramedics arrived to my house. I remember my mum and dad just said it was like all hell broke loose. Like they come in, there was so many paramedics, doctors in my room. They were working on me. There were machines. There was beeping. There was phone calls. There was radios. Like you name it, there was everything going on, and they just couldn't believe what was happening. Before you know it, I was just taken on the stretcher, carted off down into the ambulance, taken to the first hospital, where my mum sort of followed in pursuit, and my dad stayed at home with my siblings. And my mum was obviously desperately asking for questions, and they didn't give her any answers. And then finally, they come out and they said, "Look, we're going to take him via air ambulance to a specialist hospital because he needs an emergency brain operation." My mum was like, "What the hell?" Like she couldn't believe this, but they didn't. They took me in the ambulance, and my dad arrived then as well. So they followed in the ambulance to the specialist hospital. I believe it's like 1 or 2 hours away. They take me into this specialist hospital where I needed to go in for an emergency brain operation because I suffered from a fractured skull and a blood clot due to a bleed on the brain. So now I'm in the induced coma on a life support machine. And my parents finally got to see me that evening around 6 p.m. When they say spoke to the specialist that done the operation, he literally said, "Look, it's not looking good for Ryan. We would really suggest that you prepare for the worst. And with that being said, go back tonight and tell all of his loved ones like it's not looking good and potentially Ryan's not going to be here tomorrow." So you can only imagine, like from a parent's point of view, what they must have been thinking, feeling in this situation. And yeah, my parents just said they drove back that evening, maybe a 2 hour drive in complete silence, you know. So on the second day, obviously my parents went back to see me in hospital and there was no progress. Like I was just laying there in the intensive care unit on a life support machine. However, on the third day, my parents were also invited by the specialist that done the operation on me. And my parents said like they went into this separate room and they sat down. And the man that done the operation on me, he said, "Look, because there is absolutely zero brain activity and because of the situation that Ryan's in, we would highly suggest that you pull the plug on his life support machine." So just imagine for any parent out there that hears that about their child, what my parents must have been thinking, feeling in that moment. And you know, my dad stood up in that moment and he said, "No way are you turning this machine off. No way. You don't know Ryan like I know Ryan. Ryan takes his own time to do anything. So you need to give him that time." And by my dad saying that, you know, they kept that machine on for me. And over the following days, there was no real improvement. Like there was nothing happening. And with that being said, it got to the day that they said they was going to reduce the sedation to bring me out of the coma. And the day that they done that, all of my friends, my loved ones, my family, they arrived at the hospital. And as they arrived, they believed that I was just going to sort of wake up and speak to them that day. I think so, you know. But it wasn't the case. They reduced the sedation that morning. And sadly for me, my lungs weren't functioning by themselves. So I had to be put straight back into the coma. And yet again, the doctors, the specialists said, it's not looking good for Ryan. Like, this machine is keeping him alive. And if miraculously he does wake up, he would never ever walk or talk again and be in a vegetative state for the rest of his life. But my parents, you know, they said, no, it's not the case. Ryan needs more time. And, you know, in that moment, my parents, they had hope. And I believe in life, like we all need hope to cope, have only positive expectations. And that's what my parents had, you know, they believed that I was going to come round. So the next day, again, they said they're going to reduce the sedation to hopefully bring me out of the coma. And this time was like my final time, you know. So again, my friends, my family, they gathered on the next day. They reduced the sedation. And that day, thankfully, my lungs started to function by themselves. And it wasn't like I woke up and I spoke to everyone. No. It was just a line on the machine saying that he's breathing by himself. So over those next few days, again, there was no real response. Like, I believe my toes were twitching slightly, my fingers started to twitch. And then it got to the time they started to ask me questions. They said like things like, "Oh, do you own a car? Do you have a motorbike?" And my head would slightly twitch. And this was like really positive for my family, for my loved ones. And then it got to the day, you know, my grandma, my nan, like she leant down and said something in my ear. And bearing in mind, like my grandma, like we used to go down there as children. We never ever messed around in front of my nan because she would give us a whack bum, like, you know, like she'll whack our bum, like, and it was true. So we'd always listen to our nan. And this day, you know, like my nan, she leant down into my right ear and she said, "Ryan, open your eyes." And apparently I lay there and one eye just opened up and I stared at everyone. And, you know, they were so excited. They said they were cheering, they were shouting, they were screaming. And they run and they go and tell the doctors. And the doctors, the nurses, they said, "No, this is nothing. This is just all electrical impulses. This always happens. He's not going to wake up. He's not listening." So, yeah, my parents were like up here with excitement. And they just got dropped straight back down to say reality. And the doctor's saying, like, he's not going to wake up from this. So they just had that hope still over the following few days. But then it got to the day that I obviously did wake up. But before waking up, I had an out-of-body experience, which was so profound. You know, it made me question my life, the universe. It made me question every single thing that I know up until now. Okay, so now I can only speak to you from my out-of-body experience. This is in my out-of-body experience. So this isn't real life. So just imagine yourself seeing what I see in this moment. And this experience was unbelievable, but it was so crystal clear. It was like the most clearest thing that I've ever visioned in my whole life. Like, it was like real life, but on steroids, like HD 5, whatever. It was insane. It was so crystal clear and it all just made sense. I remember looking down at myself being pushed by these two big ladies on a hospital bed. And I'm viewing this whole thing through the eyes of someone or something else. And as I'm looking down at me, we're going down this cobbled street. And these two ladies are pushing me down this cobbled street. And I'm looking down at myself and my body is just sort of bumping down this cobbled downhill street, you know? It's like a back alleyway almost. And as they're pushing me, I remember hearing this voice saying, "They're going to drop him. They're going to drop him. They're going to drop him." And it was just whispering over and over again. And I just kept thinking, they're going to drop me. And my body was going down the bed to the point where it almost fell off the edge of the bed or the end of the bed. Oh. And as it was about to fall off the end of the bed, we made this sharp left-hand turn through a giant set of glass sliding doors into this huge sort of reception area. And as these ladies are pushing me towards this receptionist, this desk, the receptionist is just pointing there to her left. And everyone is talking in this unknown language. Like, it wasn't English, it wasn't Spanish, it wasn't French. It was an unknown language. And I don't know what language it was. I've never heard this in my life. So as we're going towards this lady at this desk, she's pointing to her left. So we make a sharp right-hand turn. And now we're just heading towards, say, a brick wall. And now I'm viewing this experience from the other side of the reception area. And as I'm watching it, you know, they're getting faster and faster and faster, heading towards this brick wall. But they're not really moving anywhere. It was a weird sensation, you know. Like, I could see them getting closer, but it wasn't going anywhere. And it was speeding up as well. Like, it's crazy to explain this, but it's almost unexplainable. And as I'm watching from a distance, you know, I'm looking and I'm thinking, they're going to hit that wall with me on it. And I'm almost bracing. Like, these eyes that I'm viewing it through is almost bracing for impact. Mm. And it got to the point where I sort of closed my eyes because it was that close and I knew they were going to hit it. And as they actually did make contact with the wall opened up like a giant cat flap. The bed went up and my body fell through this, say, portal, this doorway. And as I fell through, these eyes almost got sucked back into my own body. It was like another transition. And now I'm just falling through almost dark nothingness. And I'm looking around. And everything is just black in this place. There's nothing. It's just black. And I'm looking down, I'm looking round, and I'm looking for answers. And I could have been falling, for like an hour, a day, a year, a lifetime. I don't even know. Like, in this out of body experience, there was no concept of time or space. Like, everything was just forever.
Mm.
And as I'm falling for what seemed to be forever, I'm looking for answers. And I look down. And as I look down to my left, there's this just giant glistening outline of a square that's shining bright white. And I'm falling towards this. And I know that because as I was falling, it was getting bigger and brighter, bigger and brighter. And I remember to the point it got so big and bright. Again, I closed my eyes. And as I closed my eyes, I felt my soles of my feet, bam, make impact with what I can only imagine is another doorway to another dimension.
Mm.
And as I sort of slid through this next doorway, it almost felt like I was coming out of the end of a slide and I just landed in yet again another hospital bed. And again, I'm just viewing myself through the eyes of someone or something else. And I'm looking down at myself. And as I'm looking down, I'm looking for answers. And there's just me laying there. And then again, doctors, they enter the room and they start to speak in this unknown language again. And they start operating on my head. And I'm watching. And it's the most blissful thing that I've ever seen is me being operated on.
Oh.
It was the most picture perfect thing that I've ever seen. There was no blood. There was no guts, no, nothing horrible. It was just perfect. And as they operated on me, it could have been forever. I'm just thinking, what happens next? And then they disappear. And I'm looking for answers. And then again, out of nowhere, there was this transition where these eyes were sucked back into my body. And I'm laying there. And I remember I opened my eyes. And I'm not in a room, because there was no walls, there was no ceiling, no floor. It was just me, a hospital bed, and a huge curtain in front of me. And as I open my eyes and look up slightly, I'm thinking, what's going to happen? And then suddenly, these curtains start to open. But then as they open, that sort of slight crack in the curtains, this supernatural bright white light comes shining through yet again to the point where I close my eyes. But then it felt safe to open my eyes again. So I turned around and I opened my eyes. And as I look up, I remember I looked out there, and as far as the eye could see, all I saw was faces. Faces of every single person that I'd ever seen in my whole life.
Oh, wow.
And I remember, as far as I look back, as far as the eye could see, there was faces and faces and faces and faces. However, it was in an order of importance, like right back there. It could have just been someone that I bumped into in the street a long time ago, as a child, for instance.
Mm.
And then closer was a childhood school friend and maybe a family friend, family member. And then right at the end of the bed was my family, my mum, my dad, my siblings, grandparents. And I look at them. I remember looking at every single one of those faces. And every single face was silently sobbing. There was just tears running down the faces of every single person that I looked at.
Mm.
Straight away, this just impacted me. It just hit me straight in the heart. I remember just thinking, what have I done wrong? That was the first thought that came to my mind. What have I done wrong? So I look at them. And I start to try and speak. I start to try and grab their attention. But, as I did, no words would come out. So I tried to wave them. They literally looked straight through me. It was like I didn't even exist. So I remember I tried for what seemed to be forever, but then I give up. I cried. And as I was crying, I just closed my eyes and I put my head back and bam. As soon as my head hit that pillow, it was just like the biggest suction on the top of my head, and it sucked this whole experience up and out of my head. It was like the bright white light, the faces, the bed, everything. It sucked it up and out of my head. And, in this place, my body was very cold. But now I feel my body starting to get warm.
Mm.
And then in the distance, all I hear is this beep, beep, beep. And I honestly believe like it was my alarm clock. For whatever reason, I thought it was a Saturday morning and I had work. Crazy. So I'm listening to this beeping noise. And I'm saying, Ryan, you need to wake up for work. You need to wake up because you're going to be late. And your boss is going to be so angry with you. I remember this beeping got louder and faster, louder and faster. It was beep, 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 beep. To the point, I opened my eyes. And there I was, back in the real world. I'm back on Earth. And I'm laying there in that intensive care unit all by myself, pitch black, no windows, just machines everywhere. And I remember I looked down at my body and I had needles penetrating my skin. I had tubes in my throat. I had all these pads over my chest. And I'm thinking, what is this place? Is this real? Is this a dream? Like, where am I?
Mm.
And then, beep, beep, to my left. So I looked round. And that beeping wasn't my alarm clock. That was the intensive care unit. That was the life support machine that had been keeping me alive all along.
Mm.
And as soon as I saw it, all of those memories prior to, say, being attacked come flooding back. I remembered everything. I remember the day, where I was, what I'd done, the people who I was with, in the club, the taxi. I remember everything. All of those memories come flooding back and they got downloaded into my mind. And it was like the biggest download of information I had ever had. I was so clear. I knew exactly what happened. And, it gave me the worst headache ever. It was like someone hit me over the head with a baseball bat. That's how much information got downloaded into my mind. Yet again, I just cried because it was so much information. I cried. And I remember, I cried. And again, in the real world now, I cried and I put my head back. And I just cried myself to sleep. I woke up that morning. When I woke up, the first thing I saw was all of my loved ones stood around my bed. And they were looking at me. My mum was crying. The doctors were there. And I remember the doctor stood right in front of me. Bear in mind, I couldn't speak because I had a tracheostomy. But the doctor stood there saying to my parents, he's probably not going to remember your names. He don't know who he is. He don't know who you are. He doesn't know where he is. Yeah. I'm sat there almost immobile. And I'm thinking, you idiots. I know exactly who everyone is. I know where I am. I know what's happened to me. I know everything. Mm. And I remember my oldest brother. First thing he said is, he come right close to my face like this. He went, I wonder if he knows who I am. And I thought, if I could slap you right now, I would really slap you around the face, you idiot. Of course I know who you are. And my mum's just looking at me. My mum is just crying her eyes out. And I'm just laying there motionless. But I knew where I was. I knew what had happened. And just give it another day or so. I started to sort of improve rapidly to the point as soon as I could start moving my arms, the police were there. And they wanted to interview me. I remember that. And I wrote down on a piece of paper exact to the pinpoint. I wrote down exactly what happened. And they could not believe it. The doctors, the specialists, my family, my loved ones could not believe it. Even the police. And then after this, obviously I made a slow, you could say a rapid recovery, but it was over a long period of time as well. Mm. And really being in that hospital, only just a few days after, say, waking up, I remember I walked myself to the to the bathroom for the very first time. Bearing in mind, it's like 10 steps across the room.
Mm.
All of my loved ones were around my bed, and I said, "I got something to show you." This was once the tracheostomy was removed, so I got something to show you. I pushed my legs off the bed. I grabbed onto the Zimmer frame that I had there, and I walked across that room. I remember to the bathroom, and they couldn't believe it. My friends, when I entered that bathroom, it was like a dark, dingy toilet. You must know these hospital toilets, dark
Yeah,
and
very
dingy.
well.
Just a single bathroom. I go in there, just
Mm.
me in this room, and I obviously go for a wee, turn around, and I start washing my hands. But as I'm in this dark, dingy room by myself, it felt like someone else was with me. So I'm washing my
Mm.
hands. And I'm thinking, who's here with me? I can feel a presence almost. And then something was saying to me, like, look up. So I did. As I was washing my hands, I began to look up. And I remember, as I look up, I meet the bottom of what is a mirror. And I look up and I made eye contact with this thing in the mirror. And I look straight back down. And again, it was that information overload. Like, what have I just seen? I couldn't believe what I'd
Mm.
just seen. And I remember I start shaking. I start crying. And I'm gripping the sink so tight. I almost broke this sink. I was gripping it that tight. I was just crying my eyes out. And then something told me to look back up. So I looked back up. And as I look up, I made eye contact with this thing in the mirror. And I just locked onto it. And now I'm observing it. I'm looking round. It's got this skeletal features of the face. It's got half a shaven head with all these staples down it. One eye is pointing upwards. Got a
Mm.
hole in its neck. And I'm looking at this thing in the mirror. And I'm thinking, what is this? And then I just burst out into tears even more. I just broke down. Because I realised in that moment, that thing that I was looking at was me.
Mm.
And I looked in the mirror. Like when we look into the mirror, we expect to see ourselves, right? I looked into the mirror and it wasn't even me that I was looking at. And it was the worst thing that I'd ever seen myself in that condition. And I remember I walked back to the bed on my Zimmer frame and I come out, my face was just pouring with tears. And all of my loved ones were looking at me saying, what's happened? What's wrong? I sat in the bed and I just said, it's me. They said, what do you mean? I said, it's me. I look horrible. I look horrible. And my mum, my friends, they were just crying their eyes out. It was one of the worst things that I'd ever seen myself,
Mm.
However, my friends, they managed to cheer me up a bit. And before you know it, only just a few days after, I went from Zimmer frame to crutches and I was progressing. I was making a rapid progression over the next few days
Mm.
to the point they transferred me to a hospital closer to my home. I was just in there for 2 nights. And I remember one morning, the doctors come round. They said, we think you're ready to go home. My parents arrived. They said, what's going on today? What's happened? I said, I'm going home. My parents couldn't believe it. They looked at each other. They said, no. And I said, no, I'm going home. No, you're
Mm.
not. You're really ill. You're in a bad situation. Like, you can't go home, Ryan. Mum, Dad, I'm going home. I remember they walked across the room. They said to the doctor, oh, we know that you said like Ryan's memory's going to be really bad and he might do some like weird things. He thinks he's going home. And they're going, yes, he's go-. And my parents just done this. Both of them went and looked at me and I went,
Yeah.
I told you. And they come over and all of the doctors, my friends, my family just said like, what do you want to do? I said, I want to go home now. So I just grabbed all of my belongings. I grabbed my crutches. We walked out of that hospital into the cold, frosty car park. And I remember my parents, they just grabbed me, they cuddled me and they just cried. And we were
Mm.
just there crying, just in this, just like cuddling each other. And my dad just said, you're coming home where you belong. And we drove back. And I remember the whole way back, every bump that we went over, every corner that we turned, my mum just went, are you okay? Ryan, are you okay? And my dad just said, leave him alone, he's fine. We got back to the little village where we live. And as we're coming back through the village, all of my friends were there. And they saw me in the back of the car. They were screaming. They come running down the road. And I'm not
Mm.
joking. I got in my house 5 minutes later. I had probably 30 people at the front door. And my
Oh,
mum was
wow.
saying, they can't come in. They can't come in. He's too
Yeah.
tired. My dad said, let him in. Let him in. My front room of my parents' small house was brimmed with my friends. They just wanted to touch me. They wanted to cuddle me. They wanted to kiss me. They
Yeah.
wanted to speak to me. And I'm there. I've got a picture somewhere. I'm like a skeleton. I've just got this white, pale skin. I think I was 7 stone in that moment. And I was just glad to be home, you know?
Mm. Mm. Wow. Thank you so much, Ryan. I was kind of hanging on to every word, just like what happens next and feeling the emotions. I got goosebumps a couple of times as you shared your story with us because there's so many parallels to my own story. My own story is I had a brain bleed. My own story is I flatlined on an operating table, and
Yeah.
right down to thinking about the appearance and I don't know, there's just so many things there, which I was like, oh, okay, yep, yep. I feel like I'm being reminded of my own story. It was just amazing. So thank you. I have thought so many times, why did this happen to me? Not in a bad, well, in the beginning, it was really like, oh, why did this happen to me?
Yeah,
And
sure.
then it turned into curiosity of, well, why did this happen to me? Because I could
Mm.
see so many gifts that I was given and so many things that I learned through the experience itself. So I'm going to ask you this question. Why do you think all this happened to you?
You know, I agree with everything you just said there, my friend. And look, for a very long time after, I thought it happened to me. Why me? Why not someone else? Why me?
Yeah,
Why did I have to
yeah.
go through this? You know, I made a quote and it says, sometimes your most profound periods of pain can also turn out to be your greatest gifts of growth.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And, you know, for me, when people hear my story, every single time people say, I'm so sorry. I say, please don't
Yeah.
say sorry. Say
Nah.
thank you. Say well done. Say congratulations. Because that, although for my parents it was so much worse, because the pain, the stress, the anger
Yeah.
that they had to go
Yeah.
through, for me, it was the best life learning lesson that I've ever had.
Mm.
It made me question my life, reevaluate my life. And if it wasn't because of that, I would not be here today. So why did it happen to me? I don't know, because what happened after that, I boxed up and buried all of those thoughts, feelings, emotions, that whole experience.
Yeah.
And I went into a very fast paced relationship with my ex girlfriend. And I just forgot about everything. I never, ever addressed the emotions. I just pretended that it never existed. You know, emotions are the reporters for the soul. Like, unexpressed emotions will never die. They are buried alive and they will come forth later in much uglier
Mm.
ways. And for me, that's what happened later down the line. Yeah, that's another story. But I didn't address it. I just thought, oh, I'm out of hospital. I don't need any therapy. I think I
Mm.
went to see a guy that specialised in this like once or twice. Then my parents just went every time. I never went to it because I was like,
Oh.
oh, I'm fine now. I'm living my best life. I got this girlfriend. We're traveling. I was
Mm.
pretending nothing happened. Never addressed any of it. So for me, I was just so thankful to be alive because my parents, they were going to these sessions. They felt like imposters because the people there, the loved ones, the families, their children either died or they were like in vegetative state, like the doctors told me I would be.
Mm.
So for me, I was just so lucky to be alive. But then to answer your question, why? I don't know. I didn't address it for years. However, when say my relationship with my ex girlfriend come to an end, I went on that inward journey. You know, the journey of self discovery. Because in life, if you don't go within, you'll end up going without. And for me, I was always looking for answers outside,
Mm.
externally. But I believe we all have the answers within. It's just having the courage to take the uncomfortable journey of self because it's the most daunting journey that you'll ever go on, but it's the most rewarding for sure. And
Mm.
when I went on this journey, embarked on this journey of self discovery, I started to look back on my past and look at this whole experience and started to ask questions and look into why this may have happened to me. I started doing research online, different ways of connecting with oneself, how to maybe potentially go back to that experience. And yeah, I found maybe spirituality. I found many different things over the previous years. And I got into meditation, real deep meditation, where I was sitting in my mum's bedroom, pitch black for hours on end, doing deep breath work, deep meditation. And I could get some answers and get clarity, but it wouldn't. I was struggled to find out exactly what it was. And then after doing this for many, many months, I realised this is what I believe happened. I saw all of those faces crying their eyes out, and it was every single person I'd ever seen. They were crying because I hadn't yet finished the job that I was sent here to do on Earth in the first place. I had died with my magic, my gift still inside of me, and they were crying because they knew that if I didn't fulfill my mission, if I didn't discover my purpose and actually go through and take the uncomfortable actions to actually achieve what it was I was put here on Earth in the first place to do, that their dreams couldn't come alive too. And they were all crying because they knew that I had been sent to do something amazing in life, but I hadn't. I had let fear stop me. I let other people's opinions stop me. And I was just living this life for society, just doing what society says. I wasn't living my dream. I wasn't trying to discover my dreams. I was just living this mundane life just because. And I died. And they were crying their eyes out because I hadn't done what I should have done and what I needed to do. So I believe the reason that I was sent back was to finish the job that I was sent to do in the first place. And that's why my life had been spared yet again. Because look, growing up for a young child, they used to say I was the cat with 9 lives. Every weekend I'll be out smashing my head in, blood coming out of my head. My poor mum. I was running out in front of cars, in buses, you name it. I'd done it. God, my mum, my poor mum. And how I didn't die many, many years ago, I don't know. But you know, this life now that I'm living, this is the only last life that I need, because this is the one that I'm going to make count. And I'm a big believer that we're all born with 2 lives. But the second one only begins when we realise that we just have one. You know, like, the truth is, we've all been dying since the day we were born. Like nobody's getting out of this experience of life alive. Like, we've all been dying since the day we were born. Time's been running out literally since the day that we got here. So stop putting off things. Like, start taking uncomfortable action. Because one day your time is going to run out. Like, I say, like, my parents, they met loved ones of other people in the same position as me, whether it's children, friends, family members. They were in that same position, in that intensive care unit, laying there. Doctors wanted to pull the plug. They listened to the advice of the specialist. But sadly, those loved ones, they didn't pull through, obviously, and they died. But that's what we do, right, in life. We listen to the people who we believe are the specialists, the ones that know what to do. Like, if you want, say, your car fixing, you go see a mechanic. If you want your boiler fixing, you go see a plumber, for instance. If you want you fixing, you go seek the advice or help of a doctor. Let me tell you this, like, no doctor could ever put a definite deadline on your dreaded day of demise. No doctor can put a time when you're going to leave this earth. Like, no one can say, oh, you're guaranteed to leave this earth. Like, we're all here at different times. We all are unique individuals. So never ever let, say, your diagnosis be your prognosis. If someone said to you, you've got a year to live, don't take that away, because what you think about, you'll bring about. You'll start showing up as the person that's going to die. And you will go at that time. But if you have the mindset of, I'm going to stay here, whatever it takes, I'm going to find a way, you can do it. Like my loved one, my granddad. He was my best friend. Like, I got a tattoo on my chest that says granddad, close to my heart. I believe he pulled me through, you know. And they said to him a long time ago he was going to die. And he stayed for a lot longer than he should have done. And I've heard many stories of these things as well. So never give up on yourself, anyone. Like, never ever give up on yourself. Because so many people are going to say to you, like, you can't do this. You shouldn't do this. This is not your time. No, you don't know what you're doing. But never ever let someone who was too scared to go after, or who gave up on their dreams, talk you out of pursuing and achieving yours. Never let someone else decide, design, determine, or dictate your destiny, because this is your life. It's down to you to create the life of your dreams. Like, we got one opportunity at this life. Like, not many things in life are guaranteed, like 100%. The 2 things are that we are all born and we will all die. It's what we do with the opportunity between these 2 events that really matter most.
Absolutely. And, it comes back to, I talked about in the very beginning, squeezing the juice out of life. We have so many opportunities, so many ways that we can respond to things that come up. I love your message. I love everything you're talking about. I'm thinking of an interview I did with Dr. Peter Fennick, and he was talking about negotiating your time of death. So this was a bit more of a spiritual concept about how potentially we could negotiate. Well, I'm kind of planned to die on Friday, but maybe we could
Yeah,
make it a Tuesday morning because I want to see this person, or it would just suit
yeah,
me better in my earthly body. So
yeah,
I'm curious around that. You also said I came back and I had stuff to do. I hadn't finished what I was meant to do. All these faces with their tears and crying was because I hadn't completed what I needed to do. So I'm thinking about these concepts together, these two separate conversations between you, Peter Fennick. Do you think we can die before our time's up?
yes, I agree with this. So look, there's a quote and it says, most people die at 25, but aren't buried until 75.
Yeah, yeah.
Because so many people, I was one of these people, 25 years old, I was looking forward to retirement. This is not a word of a lie. I was looking forward to retirement. 25 years old, people were out partying, drinking. I was sat at home gardening, waiting to retire. But so many people are going to wait decades to start living their best life when it may never come. Like, just imagine when you was born, like we're all given a birth certificate, right? Just imagine you was also given a death certificate. You could clearly see on that piece of paper your exact day of death. How are you going to show up differently? Are you going to hang around with the same people? Are you going to do the same things? Are you going to procrastinate doing what you know you really should and want and need to do to create the life of your dreams? No, you wouldn't. But like I said earlier, the truth is we've all been dying since the day we were born. And for me personally, I don't want to perish filled with potential. I believe so many people out there are putting off doing what they know that they need and should do because of society's social media, because of fear. Don't ever let fear stop you. Don't fear failure. Fear regret. Make the pain of regret worse than any other pain that you could ever imagine. Because the pain of fear and failure is temporary.
Mm.
But the pain of regret will last a lifetime.
Yeah, totally agree. I think so many people are dying before they're dead. But in terms of actually physically dying, do you think we come here, we can't die before we complete our tasks, or can we die and have to come back? Or how do you think that works? Because on one hand, I feel like life is so strong. You talk about your story, all the things you've physically endured, the things you've had to go through, and yet you didn't die. So in some ways, life feels so strong and it's hard to break it. And then on the other hand, it feels so fickle. Life can be gone in an instant. And, it's kind of these extreme ends of the scale. And I get really hung up on this because I feel like life is fickle and yet it's hard to die. Can we die before our time? If we got that death certificate along with our birth certificate, can the date be changed, do you think?
That's a great question, by the way. So I don't know the answer, in all honesty.
None of
I
us
can give you
know
my
the answer.
experience.
Yeah.
But from my experience, what you've heard today, I truly believe none of us know the real meaning of life until we actually face death. Until we actually die ourselves, we don't know the true meaning of life. And even now, I don't believe, although say facing and overcoming death, I haven't truly died, and I don't know the answers. But for me personally, I always get say deja vu. I always get deja vu, like really, really deep. It hasn't happened much recently whilst on this travel. It's happened a few times, but it's very profound to the point where it can be like almost a minute, and I know everything that's going to happen. Like it's crazy. And sometimes I keep saying to myself, like, I've lived this life before. I've lived this life before. Like I know what's going to happen. So in one side of my mind, I think maybe I have lived this life in different experiences, in different forms, shapes, bodies. I don't know, but maybe I've lived this and I keep getting sent back because I'm not pushing through that barrier to do what I was meant to do. Because I don't fully accomplish what it is that I was sent to do in the first place, I keep getting sent back and sent back. And that's why I get these visions, these deja vus to say, what do I need to do different this time? Pay attention, Ryan. Because last time you was here, you didn't do something that you should have done. So sometimes I say to myself, maybe we do keep coming back. Maybe we never die. Maybe we just keep living different experiences in different bodies, different forms, different shapes.
Yeah.
Who knows? I don't truly know. But on the other hand, I think we do die and that's it. You don't know until you get there, I think. So for me, my biggest fear was death at one point.
Mm.
But I managed to use my fear in my favor. Like death for me was once a desired destination. When I went through that relationship breakup, depression, I wanted to commit suicide. Like bearing in mind a few years before, I was laying in that hospital bed and it was totally out of my control whether to switch my life support machine off or not, to pull the plug. And when I was depressed, I wanted to pull the plug on my own life. It's crazy. But now I just live my life to the fullest, knowing that I will never truly know until I get there. And I'm never going to say no to any option because anything is possible in this life, this opportunity. Everything is just potential opportunity. And I don't want to say get to that deathbed knowing that I still had juice inside of me, knowing that I still had potential inside of me. I haven't squeezed the lemon of life. Maybe what I'm trying to say, I don't know. But
a lot of people say life is full of lemons. You make lemonade.
Yeah, you got to squeeze
no,
them. And if you don't squeeze them, you're going to take those lemons to the grave with you. And what are they going to do? They're going to sit and rot. Like no one remembers the unused, unfulfilled potential laying there in that coffin, do they? No one remembers that stuff. It's just a waste.
I know. I'm a passionate believer that life is for living. I very much believe we need a spiritual outlook, but we are here having a physical experience. And when we're talking about squeezing the juice, it's not doing all of the adventures and jumping out of planes and chasing adrenaline. I mean, that might be part of it to face our fears, because I believe when we face fears, we can grow. But it's about connecting with all of the goodness we can squeeze out of this life and connecting and doing our best and loving our people hard. And, there's so much to it. So I absolutely love what you're saying. Ryan, you've been a huge inspiration to me. Like I said, I got goosebumps a couple of times listening to your story. It's amazing what you're doing. I'm so grateful to you for sharing your story with us. So Ryan Nurse, thank you so much.